being consciousness itself. Thought is almost an instantaneous way. You can travel, so to speak, with your thoughts to a different place. Is that possible?
Oh, yeah. Well, we're finding that the power of thought is just quite amazing, that the power of thought is demonstrated in all sorts of areas, that we know that a thought is, people always say a thought is a thing, but actually a thought is a thing that affects other things, because there's been demonstration that thought can affect, electronic equipment. This is scientific studies I'm talking about. Science. That it can affect all kinds of electronic equipment, random event generators, which are random electronic machines, kind of like an electronic version of a toss of a coin, with random heads and tails all the time. And they've shown thought can affect that, and thought can affect everything living, from single-celled organisms to full-fledged human beings. And it seems to operate outside of time and space. Seems that it doesn't matter when you generate the thought, it still has an effect. Or if you're 3,000 miles away or sitting in front of the thing, you seem to have an effect. And it seems to multiply. There's some evidence it may multiply in numbers. In other words, the more people are thinking the same thought at the same time, the more they're having an effect, which is what I'm testing now with my intention experiment.
Very interesting. I just want to tie this back because there's an interesting story about this, I guess, in connection with 9/11, right?
There was some evidence. There's a thing called the Global Consciousness Project, which has got, it was started with someone who worked at Princeton University, and his name is Roger Nelson, and he has put these random machines all over the place in the world. They're called random event generators, and they have let's say there's a computer, they're in a computer. It would randomly show up two different images, let's say apples and pears all the time. And because it's random, it would operate according to the laws of probability, and so you would see pretty much 50% of the time apples and 50% of the time pears. And it would just keep flipping back and forth. But with this project, they had these all around to see if big things happening in the world, and if people's attention were caught by that, if they'd have any effect on these random event generators. And they found that whenever there was a giant global catastrophe, there would be a big effect on these machines, and they would steer away from their randomness and be a little bit more ordered. In other words, showing more heads or more tails than usual. And what happened was with the biggest effect occurred during 9/11. Just before 9/11, actually, the machines really veered off their random course. And so that would suggest that there is some effect on the world from so-called world mind.
But that kind of upsets the law of time, right? Time also, I guess, because if it happened, before people were aware of it, what's going on there?
Well, that's it. I mean, none of these effects seem to be governed by time. I mean, I think that what we're understanding is that intention and the effect of mind on matter is not sensitive to time, and that time, I mean, the view of most of these physicists is that time as we know it is just a construct, and that we're creating it ourselves, but that time is probably more accurately is just one great big smeared out now.
Interesting. You mentioned, of course, thoughts and obviously, intention and all of this. How kind of would you say that this? I mean, what is it, so to speak? If we were to say, for example, in regards to thought, that this influence, not only our surrounding, but I guess even also ourselves, our own health. It connects with so many different aspects. Do you go into all these different areas in your new book?
Well, I not only look at the science of intention, and what exists. I mean, there's been so much evidence for intention being used in every area of our lives, and good science to show how powerful the effects are. But we're also testing it out. I mean, we're inviting our readers to be part of global intention experiments. and we're working with, what happened was, as I was studying about the power of intention in numbers, because that was what really interested me. Does it multiply? Does the effect multiply? The more people are thinking the same thought at the same time. And my husband turned to me one night and said, well, I couldn't find conclusive evidence. And so he said, well, why don't you do this yourself? And that seemed pretty ridiculous to me because, I'm not a scientist. I'm just a writer. But I started thinking about it, and I thought, well, I've got thousands of readers, hundreds of thousands of readers around the world, and the field is in 15 languages. And I've got many, many scientists that I know very well. Perhaps I could work with them and invite my readers to be part of intention experiments, and that would mean that we could create the greatest global laboratory in history. And so that's what I've done. So the book, in a sense, is a book with all the scientific evidence in it, and I mean, there's loads. There are 50 pages of bibliography and notes there, so there's loads of science to convince people this is real. But there is also an experiment attached, so that anyone who's read the book should just log on to the website and then be involved in these experiments. And we have so far worked with Dr. Gary Schwartz at the University of Arizona, and we've been sending an intention to affect some physical targets. All living things emit tiny currents of light, a tiny current of photons, tiny bits of light. And we were trying to see if we could manipulate that and increase those biophotons. So we've tried several experiments where we've asked people to take a leaf from a geranium plant and send an intention to make it increase its biophoton emissions, these light emissions. And our instructions have been send an intention to make the leaf glow and glow. And we found in a conference we did that we had an extraordinary effect. We had a control leaves, and we found that we had a hugely significant effect, so much so that special camera equipment that could image it showed in these pictures changes so different you could see them with the naked eye. And now we've tried this now with our 7,000 readers around the world, and we've had an effect in the right direction with string beans. We needed more beans to create a real significant effect, but had we had them, we would have had a significant effect. And it looks like we have to still calculate the ones that we've done 2 weeks ago, but it's looking interesting.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Yeah, biophotons, of course, an area that is very, very intriguing in a lot of many ways. Do you think that this field then, is kind of the way that we can our interaction with it within ourselves, so to speak, that even our DNA and our cells emit this light, and that in itself is I don't know. Do you think that is part of this field that you talk about?
Well, yes. I mean, I think that it is an aspect of it in the sense that these kind of little light emissions we are beaming and receiving instructions all the time. There's a lot of scientific evidence now to show that these light emissions among living things are being picked up by, that one living thing sends out and the other one picks it up and replies to it. There's information, like when they've done studies of fruit flies and little animals like this, they find that there are synchronicitous light beamings out back and forth. So yes, there's evidence showing that this is coming out of our DNA. This is the body's instructions coming from the DNA, that this is the central orchestra of our bodies, and it's also a communications mechanism with other organisms, and that we are constantly sending and receiving, like a television station and a television set, all at the same time, all at once. And
so we're not only we're also, I guess, interacting with it in regards to that we have a form of free will and all of this. That question comes also, I guess, into the play here. But do you think that this is an interaction? We receive, as you say, instructions from a higher source, as it were, but at the same time we can interact with it and change it and shape it, I guess.
Well, I think that's true. I think that we're discovering that we all have a we're all having a profound effect all the time. We're all beaming and sending and receiving. And with practice, and there's many, many people in many areas of life who understand this and use it. And with practice, we can become bigger intenders. We can become a bigger transmitter and a bigger receiver.
You have a chapter in your book called the voodoo effect, I think. This is very interesting. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I was very interested in whether or not we can have a negative effect. I certainly found in many areas positive effects, and that there was very powerful effects when sending positive intention. But I wanted to know if there was negative intention too, and if it was just as powerful. And I wish I could say that positive intention is the stronger force. But, I can't. I mean, the evidence shows that, when people are, say, intention masters, like Qigong masters, when they send positive energy and compare it with negative energy, they get a similar effect. That you are just as powerful when you send negative intention if you're very focused. And so, and I also think about unintentional intention. I have an example of that in my personal life. My husband and I are like Art Deco, and we had just redesigned our house and renovated our house, and we'd put new taps in the bathrooms, and we'd fixed everything up. And 3 weeks after we did, our cleaner, who was very over-enthusiastic with the scale removal, put scale removal on these taps and stripped all the chrome off all the taps in the house. And it was, an enormous amount of money lost, and I was just so upset. I didn't know what to do about it. I just took to my bed and was upset, and I vented my spleen. And I found out the next week that at the moment I did, this woman had fallen off a bus and broken her leg. Oof. And so I just wondered to myself, did I do that? And I have no answer for that, but it certainly made me that in a number of other cases like this have made me aware that, certain negative intention could have an effect. I find if I'm in a very bad mood, I break computers. I have a big, profound effect on computers or even photocopy equipment. And so I find, first of all, I stay away from equipment if in those few times I have a bad mood. And I'm also trying to be aware of negative thinking and negative thoughts, having an influence, constant little influence.
Going back to the voodoo effect, this is also... do you know if this has been tried to actually, you go interested a little bit about, not destroying bacteria, but kill, or we could say cancer, I guess, even, going into...
Well, negative intention is the foundation of a lot of healing. Because, if you have an infectious agent or cancer, that thing has to die for you to live. And so the visualization techniques of many people who are using visualization and intention to heal is about killing that microbe or killing that tumor. And so that can work. I mean, that seems to work for some people. Other people say you don't need to do that. You just have to send an intention to restore to the natural order. But I think it's really all about what works for individuals.
Yeah.
You use intention that works for you. And some people use intention to heal, use that negative intention. Other people don't. They use something different.
So I guess belief is a big part of this too, then, in a way.
Belief is an enormous part of it. And also belief between sender and receiver seems to be important. There's certainly some good evidence showing that when the sender and the receiver both believe, their brain waves and lots of other physiological processes start mirroring each other. And so the belief between healer and healee is central. And they also find that there's a bigger and better effect in somebody who believes and also has an emotional component, also has emotional commitment to it. So you really, really have to understand and believe and focus your, emotion on the idea that this will succeed.
Yeah. One thing that came to mind was when you talked about the influencing in a way that, let's say, a lot of people are focusing on one thing or